The clock in the bakery had just struck 11 when the knock came, soft at first, almost lost beneath the steady drumming of the rain, then slightly louder, more insistent. Eleanor paused in her kneading, her flour-dusted hands resting on the dough, and listened. Visitors at this hour were rare, but not unheard of. The bakery had always been a place where people came when they needed something, and that something was not always bread. She wiped her hands on her apron and moved to the door, peering through the small window set into its weathered wood. The glass was streaked with rain, blurring the world beyond, but she could make out a figure standing on the step. Someone small, someone hunched against the weather, someone who looked as though they had been walking for a very long time. Eleanor opened the door, and the night rushed in with all its cold and wet. The figure on the step was a young woman, perhaps 25, with dark hair plastered to her face and eyes that held a particular kind of emptiness Eleanor recognized immediately. It was the look of someone who had run out of places to go, someone who had been walking not toward something, but away from everything. "I saw your light," the young woman said, her voice barely audible above the rain. "I didn't know where else to go. I'm sorry. I can leave if—" She trailed off, swaying slightly, and Eleanor saw that she was shivering so violently her words could barely form. "Come in," Eleanor said, stepping aside, her voice carrying the particular warmth she reserved for those who needed it most. "Come on out of the rain. You'll catch your death standing there." It was not a question, not an invitation that could be refused. It was simply what needed to happen, what had always happened when lost souls found their way to the bakery's door. The young woman hesitated for just a moment, as if kindness was something she had forgotten how to accept, then stepped across the threshold into the warm, flower-scented air. Water dripped from her coat onto the worn wooden floor, forming small pools that reflected the lamplight. She stood just inside the door, uncertain, looking around the bakery with eyes that seemed to be seeing and not seeing at the same time. Eleanor closed the door against the night and studied her unexpected guest. The young woman's clothes were good quality, but disheveled as if she had dressed in a hurry or had been wearing them for days. Her face was pale beneath the wetness, and there were shadows under her eyes that spoke of difficult nights and difficult days. But it was her hands that told the story most clearly. They were clenched at her sides, white-knuckled, holding on to something invisible with desperate strength. "Sit gently," Eleanor guided the woman toward the chair by the fire. "Sit and warm yourself. I'll make tea." She moved to the kettle without waiting for a response, knowing that some people needed to be cared for before they could speak, needed to feel safe before they could let their guard down. The young woman sank into the chair as if her legs had finally given out, and for a long moment she simply sat there, staring at the fire, letting the warmth seep into her bones. The shivering gradually subsided, replaced by a stillness that was somehow more concerning, the stillness of someone who had been holding themselves together for too long and was finally beginning to crack. Eleanor busied herself with the tea, giving her guests the gift of time and space. She understood that whatever had brought this young woman to her door on such a night could not be rushed, could not be drawn out before it was ready. Some stories needed warmth before they could be told, needed the safety of a quiet room and a patient listener before they could find their way into words. The tea was Eleanor's own blend, chamomile and lavender from her garden, with a touch of honey to soothe the throat and warm the heart. She poured it into her second-best cup, the one with the small chip on the rim that somehow made it more friendly, more honest, and carried it to where the young woman sat staring into the flames. "Here," she said, pressing the cup into the woman's cold hands. "Drink this. It will help." She settled into the rocking chair nearby, close enough to offer comfort, but far enough to give space, and picked up her own cup of tea. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence with its gentle voice. The young woman wrapped her hands around the cup as if it were the most precious thing she had ever held. She lifted it to her lips and took a small sip, and something in her face changed. A tiny relaxation, a slight softening of the tension that held her features tight. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm sorry to intrude. I didn't know where else to go." "You're not intruding," Eleanor said simply. "The bakery has always been a place where people can come when they need to. You're not the first to knock on my door in the middle of the night, and you won't be the last." She took a sip of her own tea, letting the silence stretch, letting the young woman find her own pace. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows, a sound that had always seemed to Eleanor like the world's way of creating privacy, of wrapping a moment in a curtain of water that kept the rest of the world at bay. And here, by the fire, with tea and warmth, nothing outside could touch them. And here, there was only this moment, this connection, this quiet offering of refuge. "I'm Iris," the young woman said finally, the name emerging like something she had almost forgotten. I've been walking. I don't even know how far. I left." She stopped, her voice catching, her hands tightening on the cup. "I left somewhere I couldn't stay anymore, and I just started walking, and then I saw your light." Eleanor nodded slowly, hearing the words that were spoken and the ones that weren't. "I'm Eleanor, and you're welcome here, Iris, for as long as you need." She rose and moved to the counter where a loaf of bread from the evening's baking still sat, its crust golden and inviting. She cut a thick slice and brought it back, along with butter and a small pat of honey. "You should eat something," she said, setting the plate on the small table beside Iris's chair. "When did you last have a proper meal?" She asked the question without judgment, without pity, simply as a matter of practical concern. Food was something she could offer, something concrete and real, something that could begin to fill the empty places. Iris looked at the bread as if she had forgotten that food existed, then reached for it with trembling hands. She took a bite and her eyes closed as she chewed, and she saw something she had seen many times before, the particular expression of someone remembering that simple pleasures still existed, that warmth and nourishment and kindness were still possible. "This is..." Iris tried to speak, but the words dissolved into something else, not quite crying, but close, the release of something that had been held too tight for too long. Eleanor simply sat and waited, her presence a steady anchor, her silence a permission. Sometimes the best thing you could offer was simply to witness, to be there while someone fell apart, to let them know they would not fall alone. The story came slowly, like water finding its way through stone, fragments at first, disconnected pieces that Iris seemed to offer almost against her will, then gradually more, a trickle becoming a stream as the warmth and safety of the bakery loosened the grip of whatever had been holding her silent. She had been in a relationship, she said, a long one, years of her life poured into something she had believed was love. But somewhere along the way, the love had curdled into something else, control disguised as care, cruelty wrapped in the language of concern. She had not seen it happening, or she had seen it but not allowed herself to believe, until tonight. "He said things," Iris whispered, staring into her tea. "Things I can't unhear. Things that made me realize I didn't know him at all. Or maybe I did know him and I just didn't want to see." She shook her head, a small, lost gesture. I packed a bag while he was asleep. I walked off the door, and I just kept walking." Eleanor listened without interrupting, offering only small sounds of acknowledgement, small nods that showed she was present, that she was hearing. She had heard versions of this story before, not the details, which were always unique, but the shape of it, the particular pain of loving someone who turned out to be someone else, of waking up one day to find yourself lost in a life you never meant to build. "I don't know what I'm going to do," Iris continued, her voice hollow. "I don't have anywhere to go. My family is complicated. My friends are his friends. I walked out with nothing but my bag and my phone, and I don't even know why I thought that was enough. I don't know what I thought at all. I just knew I had to leave." "You thought you had to survive," Eleanor said gently, "and you were right. Sometimes leaving is the only thing you can do, the only choice that leads somewhere other than more of the same. You did a brave thing tonight, Iris, even if it doesn't feel brave, even if it just feels terrifying." Iris looked up, her eyes searching Eleanor's face for something, judgment perhaps, or the pity she clearly feared. But she found neither. She found only a steady gaze, a quiet acceptance, the particular compassion of someone who had lived long enough to understand that life broke everyone in different ways, and the breaking was not a failure, but simply part of the journey. "How do you know?" Iris asked, her voice cracking. "How do you know it was brave and not just stupid, running away in the middle of the night with no plan, no money, no idea where I'm going?" Eleanor was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "Because you're here," she said finally. "Because you saw a light in the darkness and you walked toward it. Because when you had nothing left, you still had the instinct to seek shelter, to find warmth, to knock on a door and ask for help. That's not stupid, Iris. That's wisdom. That's the part of you that knows you deserve better, even when everything else is telling you otherwise." The tears came then, properly this time, rolling down Iris's cheeks as she finally let herself feel the enormity of what she had done, what she had left, what she had lost. And Eleanor simply sat with her, offering a handkerchief, offering presents, offering the ancient comfort of not being alone in the darkness. When the tears had finally subsided, leaving Iris wrung out, but somehow cleaner, Eleanor rose from her chair with quiet purpose. "Come," she said, extending her hand. "I want to show you something." It was not a command, but an invitation, an offering of something that could not be explained, but only experienced. Iris hesitated, then took the offered hand and let herself be led to the great wooden counter where Eleanor had been working when the knock came. The dough still sat there, covered with a cloth, patiently waiting. Eleanor uncovered it and began to knead, her movements sure and rhythmic, her hands working the dough with the ease of decades of practice. "This is how I survive," she said, not looking at Iris, but at the dough beneath her hands. "When the world gets too heavy, when the nights get too long, when I don't know what else to do, I make bread. There's something about it, something I've never been able to explain. The way the dough responds, the way it transforms, the way it asks for nothing but your attention and gives back so much." She stepped aside, making room at the counter. "Here, you try." She guided Iris's hands to the dough, positioning them correctly, showing her the motion. Push with the heel, fold, turn, repeat. Don't think about technique. Don't worry about doing it right. Just feel it. Let your hands learn what your mind doesn't need to know. Iris began to knead, awkward at first, her movements uncertain and self-conscious, but gradually, as the rhythm took hold, something in her posture changed. Her shoulders lowered, her breathing deepened, her hands began to move with more confidence, responding to the dough's resistance and give, finding a pace that was entirely her own. "That's it," said Eleanor softly. "Just like that. You're not fighting it, you're working with it. You're having a conversation with the dough, and you're learning its language." She watched Iris's face, saw the tension beginning to ease, saw something that might have been peace flickering at the edges of her expression. They worked together in silence for a while, Iris kneading while Eleanor prepared the next batch of ingredients. The rain continued its lullaby outside, and the fire crackled, and the bakery held them both in its warm embrace. It was the kind of silence that did not need to be filled, the kind that healed simply by existing. "My grandmother used to say that bread remembers," she said. "Whatever you're feeling when you make bread goes into the dough, becomes part of it. The bread knows if you're angry or sad or joyful. It carries your emotions in its very structure, in the way the gluten forms, in the way it rises." Iris paused in her kneading, looking down at the dough with new eyes. "Then this bread is going to be very sad," she said with the ghost of a smile that was the first Eleanor had seen from her. "Perhaps," agreed Eleanor, "but sad bread can still nourish, sad bread can still sustain, and sometimes when you eat bread that was made in sorrow, you can taste the hope that was also there, the hope that kept the baker going, the hope that said tomorrow might be better. That's what I want you to put into this dough, Iris, not just your sorrow, but your hope, even if it's just a small hope, even if it's just the hope that you made it through tonight. That's enough. That's always enough." The bread was shaped and set to rise, covered with clean cloths, waiting for the morning's baking. Iris stood at the counter, looking at what she had made with something like wonder in her eyes. It was just dough, just flour and water and yeast, brought together by her own hands, but it felt like more. It felt like the first thing she had created in a very long time that was entirely her own. "You should rest," Eleanor said, noting the exhaustion that had settled over her guest now that the immediate crisis had passed. "There's a small room in the back, just a cot and a blanket, but it's warm and dry. You can stay there tonight, or for as long as you need." Iris turned to look at her, and Eleanor saw the protest forming on her lips, the reflexive refusal of kindness, the fear of being a burden, all the things that people said when they had forgotten their own worth. But before the words could come, something else surfaced instead. "Why?" Iris asked simply. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I'm just a stranger who knocked on your door in the middle of the night." Eleanor considered the question, knowing it deserved a real answer. "Because someone did this for me once," she said finally, "a long time ago, when I was young and lost and didn't know where to turn. Someone opened their door and let me in and gave me bread and a place to sleep. I never forgot it. I never stopped being grateful." She paused for a moment, her eyes distant, touching a memory. "And because this is what the bakery is for, not just making bread, but making space. Space for people who need it, space for healing, space for whatever comes next." She guided Iris to the small room at the back of the bakery where a simple cot was made up with clean sheets and a warm quilt. It was a humble space, but it was safe, and right now that was worth more than any luxury. Iris sank onto the cot, and Eleanor could see the exhaustion claiming her, pulling her towards sleep. "Rest now," Eleanor said, pulling the quilt up gently. "In the morning, there will be fresh bread, and after that, we can talk about what comes next. But for now, just rest. You're safe here. Nothing can hurt you tonight." Iris's eyes were already closing, her body finally surrendering to the sleep it had been denied for too long. "Thank you," she murmured, the words slurring with exhaustion. "Thank you for the light. Thank you for opening the door." Eleanor stood watching for a moment as Iris's breathing deepened into sleep, then quietly withdrew, leaving the door slightly ajar so the warmth of the fire could reach her guest. She returned to the main room of the bakery and stood at the window, watching the rain begin to ease, watching the first hints of dawn touch the eastern sky. She did not know what tomorrow would bring for Iris, what path the young woman would choose, what healing would be possible. But she knew that tonight had mattered. Tonight, a light in the darkness had been seen. Tonight, a door had been opened. Tonight, bread was made by hands that were learning to hope again. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. The rain stopped just as the sun began to rise, and Eleanor turned back to her ovens, ready to bake the bread that Iris had helped to make. Bread that carried sorrow and hope in equal measure. Bread that would nourish whoever was lucky enough to taste. The night had been long, but the morning was coming. It always did. And with it came the promise of new beginnings, of second chances, of the simple miracle of another day.